Hello all. So in continuation to the series of what's new in 2024 release wave 1, yes, it's a time when we talk about installation of Business Central 2024 release wave 1 on-prem. So if you are a customer who is on Business Central SaaS or if you are a partner who only deals with customers on SaaS, then this video is not for you. But if you are someone who is either utilizing Business Central on-prem or have customers who are using Business Central 2024 release wave 1 on-prem, then let's get into it. So without wasting further time, um, the link is available on MSDN, and don't worry, kind of copy this link. I'll put it in the description or in the first pinned comment of this video. This is the article about installing Business Central using setup. After all the details, you will see that you can find the Business Central initial version or the cumulative update 0 version from this link for Business Central 2024 release wave 1. Once you click on it, it pops up the download page, and here you can see for all the different localized version or the country version that it's available. And at the end, if you are on a W1 version, which is a worldwide version, then you have the product DVD for that also. There's for India, Great Britain, France, and other countries. For the demo purpose, for today's demonstration, I'll use US version of Business Central. What do you do next? You click on download, you choose one or multiple DVDs that you need and click on download. And it'll download the product for you. For saving time, I have already downloaded the product. This is how it looks like. Now, I say it in every installation video, and I'll repeat it again, that the path of the DVD is very important during installation because you might reach to the limit of the path from during the installation process when it is trying to copy the files from the installation media to your installed directory. Now the download looks like a very small path, but when you actually look at it, the download folder is placed under C, users, administrator, download, and then on top of it, there will be this name, and then the folders from where it is copying. So it's always better to copy it from here to a root directory. Once you have done that, then you extract it for sure in the same path. But even now, I would not take the risk of utilizing the same name because this becomes a little bit big name to kind of copy files from. So once the installation media is extracted, I'll rename it so that it's smaller and I don't end up with an error message during my installation. So you can use WinZip, WinRAR, or whatever software you have to extract the DVD. Once it gets extracted, the next thing that we are going to do is we are going to rename this to a pretty smaller name so that we are good with it. Now, as we go through the installation steps, there will be time to talk about the system requirements, the hardware requirement, the software requirements that Business Central comes 2024 release wave 1 have. So, okay, this is about to be done now. And as you can see, there are a lot of files, and then I'll just rename this to be BC24. If you want to be very specific, then I'll use CU0. Still, the name should be smaller. Once you have extracted it, okay, let me zoom this in so that we can see all the files. Okay, and as you can see, there are a lot of files in this folder. What we do is we run the setup.exe, run as administrator. Once you do that, the first thing is you click on next. Then you choose and read the license terms and accept it. The first option, which is get a free online trial, gives you a 30-day free online trial of Business Central Cloud version. So if you are interested in it, click on it. It'll open, and using a work or a school email address, you can set up Business Central for trial. If you are on-prem, then use the advanced installation option, and then you get two options. One is the install demo, and other is choose an installation option. Now, install demo is typically used when you're doing everything on your machine, and it is maybe for learning purposes and things like that, because every component of Business Central gets installed on the same box. But even if I want to do that right now, I'll be using the choose as installation option so that I can then explain you how you do things. Now, when you choose an installation option, here you see different options based on the different components that you have. Now, to set up Business Central, you can have a 2-server configuration, you can have a 3-server configuration, or you can just have 1-server configuration. It's completely up to you how you want to configure it. The typical configuration is 2-server configuration. The first the server is used to store your database, which is the SQL server, and the second one which holds your service tier or the middle tier, and as well as your IIS component where your client website gets hosted. But you can still choose 3, keeping all these 3 in different boxes. I'll leave it to you how you want to configure it. Under all these different options, you get this customize option. So let's see what happens when I try to click on the customize for the client. As you can see, it says install the Business Central web server component for connecting with the web client and app. So I can click on it and I'll only see that the only component that getting installed is web server component. And this is only for the client machines. For the server component, Microsoft clubs the SQL server, the middle tier in one, which is this server. It installs the middle tier of Business Central architecture, and also the web server component, which installs the component into IIS so that your clients can access it from it. As you can see, Microsoft have kept SQL Server component as separate because they are suggesting you to set it up on a different box altogether. And what is inside there is just the demo database of the environment, of the version that you're installing. So, and then you can choose developer where you'll get all the options and then you can pick and choose which one you want. I'll just keep it as it is and let's click next. Now, if you are, the first thing that you see here is install location where you want your installation to be placed. This is going to the service path and this is going to the RTC or the AL extension part, and vice versa. Sorry, this is the service part where it gets installed, and this is the AL component extension part. If you are only installing the middle tier, then you get this option only, which is the server component. Now here you specify what is the server name where you're installing it, what is the service name that you want to provide, what is the account that will be used to run services. In this case, it is this. If you want to have a different account, make sure to specify the password for that account, and it should have permission on the SQL server to access, to be the DBO on the database. Now, if you are trying to configure your environment with certificates, which is for security certificate, then you need to specify the thumbprint here, and that will get attached to your service. Each middle tier service needs 4 ports. 5 now? Yeah, sorry, 5 ports now. And if you read the Microsoft article, starting version 20 and higher, they have changed this to 7085, the suggested port. Earlier it used to be 7046, and I don't know the reason behind it, but I'll still go to the legacy route. I have other versions installed, but they are configured in a different number series. If you have other versions installed like me, then make sure to rename at least one component, which is the administration cell, because this will be overwritten with the new installation. So I have 22 installed, so I'll just rename it. Business Central Administration is not part of BC22 and development is not. So I'm good with that. So I'm using the same port. If these ports are being used, then use different numbers, but I'll revert this to the number that I want. As I'm doing here, you can do that. And then this option adds this to firewall. So if you have firewall enabled, it'll add that tool so that it's kind of enabled from the firewall. I'm not enabling SOAP. I'm not enabling OData at this moment. I'm not even enabling, I'm enabling the developer service endpoint. Now this port is utilized when you connect your VS Code to your environment. And this is for snapshot debugging. So if you are into snapshot debugging, use this. Otherwise, you can keep it disabled. And then the last is add client rule to firewall. Now at the end, it talks about how you would like your users to be authenticated. Is it Windows, username, nav user password, or ACS? You can choose whatever makes sense to you. And then if you're only installing the SQL Server component, then you get this section only, which is what is your SQL Server name? Do you have an instance on SQL that you want this database to be placed? What is the database name that you want to give? And you can change it if needed. The replace existing database option let you choose what happens if the same database name already exists. Do you want to replace it, or do you want to generate an error message? This option will upload the Cronus demo license on your database. And then this section, maybe we'll talk in a separate video sometime, but this is for public URL for all your services, web services and API calls, which we are not configuring right now, but you should be configuring it. Otherwise, there are other problems. Not from a client perspective, but when you're trying to access APIs and web services. And then the web server component, which comes up with a port, it only comes up if you choose the IIS or web server component to be installed. Again, the security certificate is needed here, and install IIS prerequisite. I have three options to install, detect, or skip. If you do install, it'll install the component that are needed. If you say detect, it'll just detect it, and skip will skip all the component that are needed. Now let's hit apply, and now let's wait for it, because this is a little bit longer path because things have changed. With the version 2024 release wave 1, PowerShell 7 is available and will be utilized for Business Central. So while this is happening, let's quickly go through the system requirement for Business Central. Again, I'll put the link in the chat, or sorry, in the description or in the first pinned comment, but you can see the system requirement for 2024 release wave 1 using this article. The article link, as I said, will be available in the description. So let's see what it have. So if you are just installing the web client or the web component for the client, then you can choose any of these browsers. And this is the minimum requirement of browser that you need to have on your client machines. If you're using mobile client, then you need to have Business Central mobile app version 3.7 or later. And the operating system that the mobile client need is Android, latest 3 major version, and same for iOS, the latest 3 major versions. Now, before we move ahead, just pay a little bit attention here. There is a PowerShell 7 that's being installed. The command is for that being installed, which was not part of the prior releases. Additional hardware is 1 GB of RAM, and this is minimum. So remember, these are the minimum requirement that are required. You should surely have more than what is suggested here. If you are into the desktop app, then again, the same set of browsers you need, and that'll give you the Business Central desktop access. If you would be using the Office application like exporting to Excel or Word layouts and things like that, then you need to install Excel, which comes up with Excel 21 or Excel Online. Same for the Word and same for the Outlook. If you are a developer and you'll be doing development, then you need to have either of these operating system. There is no limit which kind of Windows, and just for the developers I'm saying, you can be on Home Edition, Pro Edition of these different versions of Windows, but you need to have these operating system. You'll need VS Code and a language extension, which is available online. And then based on what kind of things you will be doing, you will need a minimum of hard disk space of half a GB, which is not a problem right now, 4-core CPU, and then the RAM or the memory based on what kind of things you are doing. If you are just doing basic development, then 16 GB. If you are doing development and deploying small extension, then 16 GB. Otherwise, 32 to 64 GB is the minimum requirement for the memory on your system. If as a developer you'll be working on reports, then you will need a report builder, which should be part of the installation media, and Visual Studio 20 or Visual Studio 2019. For Word layout, you'll need Word. For Excel layout, you will also need Microsoft Excel. Server component, if you're just installing the middle tier. Now this is where people get a little bit confused, because if you're installing everything on your machine, then you need to look at the highest configuration that's needed. So if you're installing everything on your machine, then make sure to check the Business Central server requirement, which is Windows 11 Pro, Enterprise or Education, 64-bit edition. So you cannot be on Home Edition or any other edition of Windows. You need to be either on Professional, Enterprise or Education of Windows 11 or Windows 10 with 64-bit edition. And if you are on server, then that should be Data Center or Standard. The hardware requirement is 2 GB of RAM, 8 GB of memory, and 32 to 64 or 16 GB RAM based on how big the extension is. You're doing sales integration, then you need Identity Foundation, .NET Framework 8.0 is needed. 4.8 is needed. And then these are other requirements. If you are just doing the web server component, which is the IIS part, then even then you will need the Professional, Enterprise or Education version of Windows 10 or 11 and IIS for sure, which also have some additional software that are needed. If you are only installing the SQL Server, then you surely need a specific version of SQL, which is SQL Server 2019 Express. And that seems to be the only SQL version that's supported right now, which is SQL Server 2019 Express or higher. Hopefully or higher is true, because it doesn't say it here. And these are optional: ADCS, Outlook and other things. But let's talk about the minimum right now from an operating system perspective. So if you are a developer and planning to install all these components on your machine, then you surely need Windows 11 or Windows 10 of these three versions: Pro, Enterprise or Education Edition with 64-bit edition. And everything else will just be part of the installation. So I'll add the link of this into the pinned comment or the first description of this video and you can see it. While we are talking about it, the installation is over, and let's quickly go into our IIS and check what got installed. Do I have a website here? So when I expand this, now I also see BC240, which just got installed, and I can browse it not on Internet Explorer, guys. I would like to see it on my Edge. So let's try pasting it here and see what happens. Now this should pop up my Business Central 24 and with my US localized database, and there is an error. That seems the service is not yet started. So let's look into the services.msc and let's look at the Microsoft one. The Business Central service for Business Central 24 is still starting. It might require a restart, but I'm pretty optimistic that it'll start working in a while. So not to worry over here, and it started running. So I'll just refresh this now, and that should pop up my Business Central 240 into my machine. Now, as I was saying in the beginning, that the path is important because the files from this get copied into my installation directory. So now if I look into my program files, under my BC240, I see the service, and all these files are coming from my installation media to this path. In the same way, when you go into your program files, x86, Business Central, 240, what you notice that this extension, this is the VSIX file, which is used to get the AL code extension, VS code extension for writing code for AL. Now this is being added if you are on a very old version, which you should not be, and Microsoft going forward, if not, supports that platform. So then you can install your AL language extension for Business Central from here using this file. Now this kind of got started, and let's quickly check into the extension management, what we see there, so that we get a fair idea of what's happening here. So if you notice, I have all these extensions coming from BC24. So with this simple steps, you can just install Business Central on-prem on your machine without any issues. Now, were you able to install Business Central using this video? If yes, then hit the like button. If you think this is something that'll help you or your colleagues or other community member, then share this video on social media, on all your social media accounts. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button. That helps us to understand how we are doing, what we should change in our process. So please do that if you haven't done that. And I'll see you sooner than later on the other video. Till then, keep learning and keep sharing. Have a great day.